So thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. So that was the original thing. Davy's title is 10 things you should know about big data. And there's a theme going with the previous speakers as well. Davy does send his apologies. He was due here until an MRI scan told him that his knee wasn't going anywhere yesterday. So size is relative. We've been through this. A few hundred years ago, a person would encounter less information in their lifetime than is contained in a daily newspaper. We've talked about the relative size of some of the activities. A baby born today is probably going to generate more data than is in the Library of Congress in the United States currently. In 2011, there were getting on for 2 zettabytes of data in the world. There's a current project that is going to be mapping the brain, and that's going to generate approximately the same amount of data just for one little project. So picking up on Andy's comments, everything's relative. What's the use of the word big data? For me, it's a bit like IBM. It used to stand for International Business Machines. Now it's just it just means IBM. I think big data is one of those things where it's losing the individual words, and basically is a combination of the technologies that are involved in storing it. And I think that's a lot of where it's come from and how we use it. But there is that combining the data and everything else. So size is absolutely one of the areas. The other thing is that Hadoop is around. Hadoop was one of those things that was generated to store data, break the back of the original data storage people. Both from a technology, they were bumping their heads when they generated some of these technologies on the traditional databases that were being used. They were also significantly bumping their heads on the cost structure that using those technologies incurred. So we've got customers who are using big data technologies for relatively small volumes of data because of the flexibility. So the other thing is, for those people that don't know Pentaho, I'm the first vendor presentation. So we'll try and keep it away from just what we do, but there are some customer examples. The other thing with the Hadoop example is, like there's more than one type of Jaguar, and plus the non-mechanical versions that live in a forest, there's more than one type of technology, so there's more than just Hadoop. We've talked through, Andy mentioned some of the different types of technologies, and there is a little bit of a horses for courses. The problem is, you get ready on your horse on a particular course, but then the horse and the course change because the technologies have moved. So which ones do you start backing? And we'll come back to that as we go through. So I've been in the industry for lots of years. I'd like to say that when I first started saying the statement I'm about to make, I did have hair, but I think I'd lost it even by then. So 20 odd years ago, I used to say to people, decide the level of granularity that you make a business decision off of and store that. Because you've got to lose the wheat. It's the wheat and the chaff. Totally different. Don't even think about it, and do not spend time thinking about too much about the legacy architecture, too much time about how you're going to do. Get on now, because every day that you're not storing the data or capturing it is an opportunity of not using that history data to project and predict into the future. So some of the common types of architectures that our customers are finding and what we're seeing in the marketplace can be a combination, or it can be individuals. So there is storage and just moving information around, but in our world, in the Pentaho world, it's quite often about visualization Again, Eddie mentioned when he started it was called different things. I started when it was called a multi-dimensional thingy, then it became OLAP, then it became executive information, then business information, now it's business analytics. It's all fundamentally the same thing about getting information to business people and line managers and clinicians and scientists to make a reasoned decision off of, and boiling that down into a particular way. So if we take the kind of stereotype big data requirement, it's a web-based application. And these days it's not clickstream analysis on a website, it's about how long somebody mouses over something, maybe even tracking the movement of their mouse across the site so that you can pick up that data. It isn't clickstream analysis anymore, it's about pages and impressions and usage, and that generates a lot more information. Some people may say, but we haven't got a website, so that's a little bit boring, but draw your own inference. Some of the technologies like Mongo, or if you're generating information that has time series information, then Cassandra is a great use. If you're just taking weblogs and ingesting them, if you're generating data from machine-generated information about anybody in manufacturing, you know, the sensors that go on in a factory, the sensors that go into a car these days. Okay, not the old Jaguar that you saw on the screen previously, but any aircraft, any car, even the smallest, cheapest car has more technology than got Apollo 11 to the moon and all the rest of it. So there's different types of reasons for these different technologies, and Hadoop can be a great storage mechanism, and you can combine these and the data can move in any direction, blending the data, augmenting the data, and having extra value as you go through. However, like we've got an aircraft theme going with my presentation, but it's not the end of shipping. And here, this, I believe, is currently the biggest ship on the seas in terms of cruise liners, and it's not the end of traditional data warehousing techniques, and indeed using the history that you've stored and that legacy information, blending that with the new form of data that's coming in from both internal and external to your organization, can put an augmentation to that data that brings that data really to life and increases the meaning of it. However, some people still like the pretty stuff, and here comes the commercial, a word from our sponsor. Pentaho is one of those companies. This isn't the BBC, so I don't have to say there are other vendors available. But taking that data and actually visualizing it, making it meaningful, making it available to people, even if it's on mobile, just because it's mobile doesn't mean you still don't need access to that big data behind the scenes. So pushing that information through is still part of what you need to do to take the data from these disparate sources, store it, present it, manipulate it, add value, and then do the traditional management information. Getting big data, in inverted commas, to management information is probably the first thing that you can think about. However, what happens in the future? Where are you going? How do you use this information to start looking at predictions? Where was Eddie's comment? I wrote down a couple of things. So correlation, not causality, prescriptions and descriptions. So being able to push the information through and being able to do proper analytics, data mining, predictive analytics type experience on there is something that you can do. You have to have confidence in the data, or, as Eddie was saying, confidence that you're not going to get it perfect every time, but at least you know the likelihood or the probability, and you can make a business decision off of that, whether it's a 0.7, 0.8 or a 0.9 type activity. But it can be hard. This isn't trivial. It can be very difficult. It can be daunting, but it can also be something that you will defer until tomorrow because it feels difficult and you're not quite sure where to start. And Andy was saying, get it going, move, be agile, be fleet of foot, start using it, and the time you can spend dipping your toe in the water might be half the amount of time that you would use to get a traditional project team together in a decent sized organisation and just get a scope and et cetera, just in terms of the governance for a project and recruiting a project manager. You could have probably already implemented something with the right tools. So everything can be available. You can use the right tools. What are the right tools? One of Eddie's comments, and again, just kind of picking up on the theme. Hopefully this is not getting too repetitious. We didn't compare notes too much, but it is, you don't have time to faff around. You do not have time to faff around, because if you do, the moment will be lost. And if you wait to see whether this version of Hadoop or that version of Hadoop, is it Cloudera, is it MapR, what's the one that I'm going to go for? If you don't get going, you will miss the boat or the plane. Okay? So we think about, again, shameless advert here a little bit, just to get our logo up there. We've got a stand over in the far side. But it is about this. I traditionally think of moving data from the left to the right. When you see my presentations and we get into discussions, moving data from source to delivery. But it isn't really about that. It's this iterative process of being able to store the information, being able to visualize it, being able to do some predictions, learn from that, and it's that continuous feedback loop. This isn't rocket science. Many years ago, one of my customers was part of BP, different company that I worked for. He got up and said, our existing system's so easy, my grandmother couldn't use it. So somebody said, so why are you replacing it? Well, she's got a PhD in rocket science. So it's something that you need to be able to do. Break it down into bite-sized chunks. Use some of these newer technologies. There are lower costs to entering the affray. So being able to take people and use it, being able to push it through into a production environment was one of the questions at the end. And we've got, again, shameless plug, but one of the things that we do is we don't store the data, but we can help orchestrate it and manage it. We can visualize it. We've got good examples of very rapid time to market. So being able to do some of the discovery, even with our tool set or just the general side, and then being able to put that into production so that it scales, so that it works, so that it's quality controlled, so that you're picking up on data errors upstream before people visualize it and say, why is this data a little bit obscure? So being able to hook into all of the different types of technologies. We tend to think of analytic databases, so the VectorWisers, the Teradatas, those types of SQL-oriented databases in one category in the big data stack. You've got the different distributions of Hadoop and kind of in this sort of middle, and it's changing. I can't wait for all of the NoSQL companies to come up with a common language. So it'll be called something query language, maybe. Common query language. No, you can't do that because somebody's already got a CQL. But when they come up with something, the rest of the industry can make a leap forward. But until then, you've got to make do with a combination of these technologies based on what you are trying to solve. Again, we've got one of the customers in Scandinavia. He uses MongoDB. It's not big data. The velocity isn't great. The variety isn't there. It's just a flexible database, and it was cheap. So again, big data, everything's relative. What are you trying to do with it? We've also got a big data company called NetApp. They are storing data from their systems. Basically, NetApp have lots of servers out in the world, and everything on those servers are being monitored. They have a phone home capability, so all of that sensor data on that millions of bits of hardware around the world are pushed through. We take that data, we manage it, we condense it down, and we support the support desk environment. However, one of my favorite ones is going back to, it's a website, it's web analytics, and they use Hadoop, It's a good customer of ours. They boil their stuff down into nuggets of gold, and their big data solution is also a relatively small MySQL database, because once they've refined the data, the actual data that's digested by people is relatively small. So in their context, their big data solution is using small data technology. And it was 10 points, so of course the final one is there's a website, and questions now if we still have time.